So today's topic is a workshop to build a complete end-to-end IIoT connected solution from scratch. We're going to load Ignition and the MQTT transmission module, simulating an edge device from your home office, your basement, wherever you're coming in from. And then see some of our partners around the world connecting in as well, showing the real power of MQTT. So real quick, MQTT overview. Well, to get started, you got to have an MQTT server. So you got to have one of those. You can have more than one for redundancy and high availability. Then on the host side, you need a host MQTT client that can connect into that MQTT server and subscribe to interesting information and publish information. And then conversely, and where the audience will be participating, is we need some edge clients, and those could be MQTT transmission running on the edge. So those components that we're going to show is we're going to install a distributor that's going to give us an MQTT server to get started with. We're going to install MQTT engine on an existing Ignition gateway that'll be able to connect in, subscribe to information, and publish information on like commands and set points. And then finally, at the edge, we're going to use MQTT transmission to be able to interface into the tags that you create in Ignition, and then be able to take those tags and publish them using MQTT Sparkplug to your MQTT infrastructure. Now, for our workshop topology today, I'm going to get out of presentation mode here. We have Ignition, and just to let everybody know, this is an Ignition 8.0.12 instance running on an Amazon EC2 instance. We're going to install Engine, and we're going to install Distributor. Now, Distributor really doesn't matter where it's at. It's very easy to install, and that'll give us our MQTT server that everybody's going to connect into. Then, hopefully, out in the field, you guys, you participants, you're looking at the instructions to be able to download Ignition, and then you're going to have the transmission module on each of your participants. So we'll have multiple transmissions out here that are going to be connecting in, and they'll be publishing information. Now, in addition to that, we've got some of our partner ecosystem on Logic, Moxa, Opto22, Signalfire with a very interesting transmitter that I want to show everybody. Those will all be connecting into this infrastructure as well. Now, if we have time by the end, we are going to give you a little bit of a preview on some technology that we're working with in conjunction with Amazon to be able to connect our transmission module into Amazon's IoT core MQTT server. And so again, these icons represent MQTT transmission, distributor, and engine. And it's really interesting is that as we build this up, of course, Engine is sitting here learning the tags as they come in. But Canary, and I'll let Jeff explain his product in more detail, but Canary is a time series database. And it's going to auto-learn all of the tag and the metadata as well as we build out this infrastructure. So that'll be very interesting as we see this all come together, because realize as I'm talking right now, we don't know anything. Everybody, we know there's going to be a broker somewhere, but that's all we know. So now I'm going to go into my Ignition dashboard, and we'll see what we've got. So again, this is my Ignition gateway. You can see I've got all of the standard modules installed, but I'm going to go to Inductive Automation, go to the download. I'm going to go to Other Operating Systems and Versions, and I'm going to go to Strategic Partner Modules for 8.12, and I'm going to download Distributor, which is my MQTT server. I'm going to download Engine. That's my MQTT client that connects to that, and I'm going to download the transmission module that we're going to use to connect into AWS. Now that I've got those modules, I'm going to come over to my Ignition gateway, go down here to the install. I'm going to choose my distributor, and I'm going to install it. So now we are installing an MQTT server up in the cloud. Now realize everything that I'm demoing here could be, and typically for most of our customers still, can be on-prem. So now we've got a new setting over here for our distributor. And you can see here that we've enabled for local connections, we've got connectivity using non-TLS to port 1883. And if we're using TLS, we can connect to port 8883. And we've already set up the default credentials so that everybody will be able to connect in and be validated or authenticated to the MQTT server. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go back to modules. And we downloaded MQTT Engine, so we're going to install Engine now. Now, Engine is the MQTT client that knows, we're going to tell it where the MQTT server is, then it's going to connect to it, then it's going to subscribe to all messages that are being published on MQTT on those spark plug topics. So now if we go, we'll see we've got a new tab for Engine. And we can see here, we're going to tell it that we're going to use the MQTT server that's running on this Ignition 8 instance on port 8883, and we've given it our username and our passwords. But notice that in the settings, in the general settings, I don't have MQTT enabled yet. So think about our infrastructure. We've got a broker and we've got an Ignition gateway, and it's got the potential to plug into that MQTT server and learn about infrastructure. But before I enable MQTT Engine, I want Chris to go through the installation of the transmission module on his Ignition gateway. So Chris, over to you.
All righty, here we go, people. And I'm going to go pretty slowly through this so that everybody can keep up. We hit gateway start. We're going to log in here. So as soon as we touch anything, it's going to want to know our username and password that we set up there as we first installed this. So we're going to sign in. And then in the same way that Arlen did, we're going to go to modules, and then we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and we're going to hit install and upgrade a module. And again here, we're going to go and find the file that we downloaded and install our transmission. So transmission is the module that takes any tags from Ignition and will publish them using MQTT Sparkplug. So it's up to you to point at a particular folder structure within your Ignition project to tell it which information to send. So everybody, I'm sure, has read this EULA in great detail and can click accept. And then this certificate is proving that the software has arrived to you unaltered and unchanged from when we created it. So that gives you the assurance there's nothing bad in here. Here we go. All right. So now, as you notice on the left-hand side, we've got, right at the bottom here, we've got transmission and it's running. And on the left-hand side, we have a new tab that's called settings. So we're going to go into settings. And then we're going to come across here to the tab for servers. And the one thing, so when it default loads, it's going to try and connect to a local host, just in case you were loading everything on your one machine. But we want to connect to Arlen's broker that's running up in the cloud on EC2. So we're going to hit edit on this. Now in the document, there is a new URL. And I got it in this text document here, but all you need to update is change that URL to ssl/ignition8.chariot.io:8883. So we're using the secure socket to connect into that broker up in the cloud. Absolutely nothing else changes. So that should be the only change you need. Everybody hopefully get that typed in. Then we're going to scroll down to the bottom here and hit save changes and cross our fingers. Yes, so hopefully everybody sees that, connected one of one. So what that means, even though Arlen doesn't have the engine plugged in right yet, so Ignition isn't seeing this information, we're plugged into the infrastructure. We're plugged into that broker that's sitting up there in the cloud. So next thing I want to do is we're going to download the designer so that we can go in and look at a project and just see some tags that we're creating and sending up there. So hit the download, install that, accept all the defaults, and watch that install. It's pretty quick here. I think the power of all this is how quickly you can set all this up. All right. Okay. So hopefully the launcher will detect that you've got a local ignition running, and so it will automatically create this launcher for you. So once you've got that, you can just hit launch. If it didn't for any reason, you can hit add a designer and go in and do it manually. But hopefully it's done it automatically for you. So we're going to hit launch. All right, now hopefully everybody remembers the username and password, and as Carl told us, don't use admin password. That's what I did. And then we're going to create a new project. The only thing we need to fill in here is a project name and create a project. Now we're launching the actual project designer. Okay. So now on the left-hand side, there's a tag, there's a section called Tag Browser. If you're on a small screen, sometimes you need to scroll down to be able to see this on the left. And underneath here, we've got a couple of tag structures. We want to look under the all providers, and then we want to look under default, MQTT tags, PLC1. And what we've done is we've just created two memory tags as examples for you to just get started real quickly. And the other thing to expand is this transmission info. And when Arlen shows his screen with us all connecting in, you'll see this unique ID, which will be how you'll recognize which one is you connecting into the system. So we've got a couple of tags here. I can actually click on this tag and enter a new value. I have to click the right enable, and that will get that sent. So that's been sent to the broker. But as of yet, nobody's plugged in, so nobody's seeing that information. Now, with the real power, I just want to show you guys, I'm going to create a new tag here. So we're going to create a memory tag. So this is the power of Edge. So you can come in here, create a tag. It's whatever information you want it to be. We can create the engineering units, miles per hour. We can set the engineering high and low so the alarms can be generated. And when this connects in and sends this information, it's going to not only tell the ignition SCADA system, as well as the Canary labs, it's going to tell every other application you've got throughout your enterprise that's connecting to this data. So once you've got all your tags set exactly how you want them, you would come down here to transmission control and hit a refresh. And now you've told everybody who's allowed to see that data of this new information. And I think that's the real power of what we're trying to show you here today. So with that, Arlen, I'm hoping that that data has made it to the broker and that you can now show us the other side of the puzzle.
All right. So let's see what happened. So let's, I opened my designer while you were doing that, Chris. So this is our community live designer, if you will. And you'll notice here that it knows I've got an MQTT engine, but I'm looking in my edge nodes and I don't have any information. So what we're going to do is go into the dashboard where we installed the engine. Going to go into MQTT engine, enable it, and save the changes. Now, if we go back to our designer, and oh, we've got edge nodes now. And Chris, what was your ID?
Oh, hold on a second here.
Let's hope it 69B7C8.
No, I'm 72C9C7.
729C7. Well, somebody got this one in. I'll refresh the tag providers again. And somebody's got an ignition on Docker Edge where they're connected in. Then let's see what else we found here. We found Opto22, and we found that it's got a turbine, and it's got a Groov Epic, and that Groov Epic is connected to an Allen Bradley PLC, and that Allen Bradley PLC has a stack light. So, hey, Benson, you want to turn on your camera? All right. So this is Benson's home studio, and we if you look on that stack light up on the Allen Bradley on top of the Allen Bradley PLC, we're going to try to take that, and let's see, that would be the stack light, and I'm going to turn on my commands, and then I'm going to publish a command. Now, just so everybody knows, I'm literally in my basement lair in Kansas City. We're connected to a MQTT server in the cloud. Man, we got a lot of people coming in here, Chris. Then I discovered that there's a Groov Epic out there, and it's connected to an Allen Bradley, and it's telling me it's got a stack light. So I'm going to click on turn that stack light on. Oh, there it turned on. Now, Benson, on the other hand, is in his home studio in Temecula, California. So I'm going to turn it off now. I'm going to turn it on. So that shows you the speed and the efficiencies of how fast MQTT really is. And we'll get back to some other cool stuff that Benson's got going on there as well. So we also found a Moxa device out there that's running Ignition Edge with all of its I/O. We found a, let's see, what else did we find? We found an OnLogic embedded computer, an IGN 300, which is a panel PC. So we know all of its I/O and all of its parameters. And let's see what else we can find here. Oh, we've got I've got a local Ignition Edge running on an embedded Linux box. So one of the things I want to show very quickly here as we go through this is that notion of a single source of truth that Chris brought up a while ago. So I'm going to open the Designer running on Ignition Edge. And this is a very simple example where I've got an Edge group, a Modbus PLC folder, and underneath that I've got a PLC at the IP address, and I've got 3 process variables. But also notice that on those process variables, if I go in and edit these, I can give, as Chris said, I can give it ranges and I can give it engineering units. So if we look at the tag structure on the Edge, come over here to our main ignition gateway and look at the same folder structure, and there's those same process variables. You can see they're updating once a second. Now, the interesting thing here is to show that single source of truth, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create another process variable here. So I'm going to copy, paste, and let's go in. We got pressure, temperature, RPM. Let's call this level. And we'll go to holding register 4, Modbus holding register 4. And we're going to make that 0 to 50. And let's do that in, let's see, your engineering units. So let's make that in feet. And 0 to 50. And say, okay. Okay, so we've added a new process variable out here in the field, level. And let's go into our temperature and change its engineering units from degrees F to degrees C. Say, okay. Now, when I hit refresh, you see these tags went stale. Now it's going to republish a spark plug birth message. And after it does that, then it will create a new set of values over here.
So, Arlen, the reason mine hadn't connected in was because I hadn't hit the transmission refresh.
Oh, okay.
I wonder if some people maybe have had that same issue because we're not using the primary host.
Right,
It may
right. That
not
could
be showing
be it.
up, but if you look under mine right now, you should see, which is 72C9C7.
Yep, 729C7.
Yep, that's me. You should see my tag that I created for wind speed with those
Yep,
parameters.
see it.
Yep.
All right. So with that, let's see. So we've discovered all that. And the last thing I did say I was going to show you. So we've got this on-logic device connected in. We've got the Moxa MC1112 connected in. We're going to go over to Benson with the Opto 22 stuff. But the final thing I'm going to show you is this is a very interesting sensor. It's battery powered. It's got an analog input, 2 digital inputs, a digital output. And I didn't even know about this device until somebody sent it to me and said, "Hey, Arlen, this thing is MQTT Spark B enabled." So I've got this device sitting on the desk right in front of me. It's not plugged in. And again, I'm sitting in my basement. So we're going to just watch the groups here. And I'm going to plug this transmitter in. It's going to connect over LTE. And let's see how long it takes for another group to show up here that is signal fire. It's got to register on the network. And we'll just watch that, but that should show up as another sensor here, and then we'll be able to discover all of its information as well. So with that, Benson, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great, Arlen, thanks. And while you're there, why don't you click on Opto 22 real quick, and because I'm going to add some. We have a turbine there. You don't have to go any further, but we're gonna talk about how we're going to add actually another Opto 22 system directly to this, and it should pop up into Engine there. So yes, if you want to pass over presenter, I'll give you guys a quick tour from my end. Terrific. So this is the workshop topology that Arlen was showing previously, and indeed this is the architecture and the different devices and so on that are plugged into this MQTT server or MQTT infrastructure. Of course, that is being represented by the MQTT distributor module running on Arlen's machine. So for those of you guys that have been following Opto for the past several years, you know that we launched a Groov Epic controller, and this, of course, is an edge programmable industrial controller. And this is after a very close collaboration with both Inductive and Cirrus Link to develop a PLC that has a built-in HMI, built-in I/O, just a very powerful next generation PLC for the industrial automation marketplace and for IIoT. But that was released 2 years ago. What I want to show you guys today is something we just released this month, and it's something that we call Groov Rio, or I/O for the IIoT. So let's take a peek, and then we'll actually configure this device to publish into infrastructure like we saw a moment ago. But first, a real quick overview. Groov Rio is indeed edge-based remote Ethernet I/O for IIoT and automation applications. But what makes this product really unique is the channel configuration. It has 10 channels of I/O. 8 of those are multi-signal, multi-function, and then we added in 2 Form C relays. Now, multi-signal, multi-function, that means analog, digital, ins, outs, you name it. And when you do all the math, you get 61,260 unique field I/O combinations from a single device, and that's Groov Rio. What's more, we made it PoE powered to make it really easy to install just about anywhere and really easy to configure because it actually has a built-in HTTPS web server. So I can actually log into it and completely configure out with no tools, nothing to download, nothing to install on your PC. But probably the best news and the reason why we're so excited to be part of this workshop is because Rio has MQTT Spark B built right in. And it's why a lot of people have labeled this thing Ignition IO. And I think you'll see why in just a moment. Now, we do get a lot of questions about, okay, you have Epic and now you have Rio. What's the diff? Well, here it is. Both products offer industrial IO with built-in Spark B over MQTT and Node-RED logic. Both offer very secure ways of accessing the device and secure ways to remotely access the device. through both built-in VPN clients, firewalls, etc. Now, Epic stands apart in that it is a real-time controller with two real-time control engines, one of those being the CodeSys IEC 61131 real-time control engine, and our own flowchart-based control engine. And then we're doing lots of, HMI, edge processing, gateway functions, and so on. Now, also what sets them apart is Epic runs Ignition and Ignition Edge, your choice, pre-installed, ready to go with MQTT and OPC UA drivers. Now, why does that matter? Well, just like Arlen showed you in the demo a moment ago, we actually have, and I'll just bring it out here on the screen for you to see, we actually have an Epic here that is indeed on its own network segment, and it's connected to an Allen Bradley and a Siemens PLC over here. So in this case, we're able to connect to existing PLCs, unsecure PLCs, I might add, over its own secure or non-routable PLC network into the Epic. And then by using these independent non-routable interfaces, we'll then publish that data out through infrastructure up to Arlen's MQTT distributor module, which of course is the MQTT broker. Finally, one last thing about Epic, it does have this there's a built-in display on this, plus an HDMI port to go to an industrial touchscreen. So those are some of the differences there. A better way maybe to look at the differences as well is through architectures, and this is what it looks like. The Groov Epic here on the left, which has been out for, as I said, several years. Lots of software, lots of control engines, lots of options here for your digital transformation projects, your real-time control applications, and of course, being able to pull in unsecure PLC data and put it into infrastructure, wherever that may be, on-premise, in the cloud, or on your devices. And this illustration also does show remote I/O or Groov Rio as remote I/O to the Epic. But what we're going to focus on is this half of the screen. I've got a little Rio here on my desk, so I'll show you that in a moment. And I'm able to take a fair amount of different digital and analog I/O wired up to the Rio. And with the software embedded on the device, I will use the Sparkplug MQTT method to move that data securely to on-premise applications, cloud, and devices as well. And in this case, I'm going to configure the MQTT Sparkplug B to publish to Arlen's MQTT distributor module running somewhere in Kansas City, Lair, as I recall him saying. So let's take a look at what this is going to, what device I'm going to be working with. So I'm going to click on here and change my camera over to a nice little Rio right here on my desktop. Okay, pretty cool. The other thing I'm going to do is scroll over here to the login screen. So here's my Rio. It's mounted on a DIN rail here. I mean, this thing is industrial, ready to go. It minus 20 to 70 degrees C, class 1 div 2, completely autonomous. There's nothing connected to this device except this one cable. And this is my power over Ethernet and communications all over a single cable. I've also got a couple other things in here that I'm sure Jeff from Canary Labs and Arlen will be messing with from afar. One's a little blue LED here on this button. And then I'm going to show you a little bit more about this potentiometer, which is simulating a tank level. So by turning this, I'll be publishing the data from that's wired right up here to this terminal, and publish that into infrastructure. Now note one other thing, that my PoE and cable here is the only power to this device, so it indeed is powering my Groov Rio and all of my I/O. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's take a look at how this is done. As I said, it is a secure connection, so I need to log in with the username and password. And I'm actually logging directly into the Rio's built-in web server, and so there I am. Really nice, easy homepage here to configure my system. There's a lot here, and I welcome you to visit Opto22's website to see a webinar that covers virtually every button you see on the screen. But for us, we're going to focus on two things. One is, of course, MQTT, and I'll get back to that in a moment. The second is the I/O channels. What data are we going to send? What kind of information do we want to publish to infrastructure? So I click into there, and there you see my 10 channels of configured I/O from my Rio. My top button, my bottom button, but let's focus on channel 2 here, this fuel level, okay? So I'm gonna click on that, and indeed, look at this. I've got fuel level as the name, and it's a 0 to 10 input, 0 to 10 volts DC. Well, I think most of us know that 0 to 10 volts DC is not very meaningful data. So why not make it something that is meaningful? And indeed, that's what we've done here. We've given it, just like what Arlen was showing a moment ago, we've given it engineering units, and we've given it some scaling. So here it is. This is how you actually configure the channel. Again, I'm just through my web browser. I give the device a name. Now this is important. This is the single source of truth. We are literally taking a 0 to 10 volt transmitter, giving it the name fuel level. Well, how do we configure that channel? Very easy. By clicking this hyperlink here, this will present all of the valid channel types, all the valid signals, I should say, for this particular channel. So there you can see the enormous amount of configurability available on just channel 2 in this case. Once I've selected that, then I can select my scaling. I put in my unit, my upper and lower scaled values, and those will be published to MQTT. If I need to, I can do some calibration, some filtering, and so on. But this is where the juice is, right here in public access. This is the information I'll publish to the MQTT infrastructure. Naturally, I want to send the value, and I want to send the value unchanged, because as we know, MQTT is a pub sub model, and we only publish data when it changes. Now I can also change the deadband. So this is a 5,000 gallon tank, right? I may not want to change or publish new data every time that just jitters a bit. I want to have a deadband. So here I'm using, what is that, a 0.1% deadband. Only if it falls outside of that deadband will I publish to infrastructure. Now also when I publish, I also want to send the maximum and the minimum reading that the Rio has latched in its software. So if I ever go above or below that, I may write that to MQTT and then maybe squirrel that away in a database and reset it at the end of each day, something like that. And that's why writable is here. This writable allows me from the ignition gateway at Arlen's facility to actually reset or set the maximum and minimum readings into a reset mode. So there's all my data. Pretty straightforward, just fill out a couple of forms and there you go. So now let's publish it into infrastructure. Well, this is simple. Check this out. I'm going to come into here, and as you can see, I don't have MQTT configured yet. So I'm going to do basically the same thing that you all did out there on your own gateways, and I'm going to put in, first I'm going to put my topic namespace together. So you saw I had a group ID in there of Opto22. Now my Edge IO ID, I'm going to do Rio Benson. And I'm going to finally add a device. So these are the 3 levels of your topic namespace as defined by Sparkplug B. So here I'm simply going to name it Ignition IO. And I do have a historic queue and some other things here, but in the interest of time, we're going to move forward. I'm going to click on Add MQTT Broker. And like what Chris did, I've actually got a copy and paste here, make things a little bit simpler. Because when everybody's watching, you always type it wrong. And then I'll put in a unique client ID here, no big deal. And the same admin and the password. Change me. And I'm done. So I click OK. Now I've got everything set up in just 2 settings, the topic namespace and the broker destination. I'll simply click Save. Now what happens next is the Rio says, okay, we've got the configuration saved, but do you want to start the service? And this is kind of like hitting that little checkbox that Chris and Arlen were showing you to start transmission. So I say yes, and MQTT will get started. It may take a moment. And with that, I'm going to actually change presenter back over to Arlen so we can see that guy pop in with its data. And then while I'm there, I'm going to change my webcam for you guys to there. And hopefully you can see it. There it is. Okay, we'll give that a whirl too and see how long it takes to show up. But we are essentially publishing in infrastructure. I'm showing my status running. I want to make sure your distributor is accepting those messages.
Okay. And then in the meantime, let's see. Just keep a time check here. Let's actually, while we're doing that, Jeff, you want to take the screen and show us what you've learned so far and kind of go through what your product is?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Arlen.
And oh, by the way, Chris, just a check here. We've got 25 end users are connected in right now.
Pretty proud of that.
All right, well, thanks everybody. Again, my name is Jeff with Canary, and we just simply want to make it easy to use your process data. Today, what we're talking about is how we can collect data from an MQTT server. And it's real simple. We just install our collector. The collector watches the broker. We subscribe to the namespace. And for today's demo, I just did a wildcard and said, everything that hits the broker, I want to grab. And we're going to publish it back here to my laptop out in Pennsylvania. So what is Canary? Well, we're a system that's built around a NoSQL time series database. The database itself doesn't require any type of DBA administration or skill set, so it makes it really operational friendly. And we can scale the database to over 2 million tags on a single server. Performance, 1.5 million writes a second, 2.5 million reads. And the most important thing you'll ever hear me say about the historian, the last point, completely lossless compression. That means raw data stays raw data forever. So let's take a look and see what we have learned so far, Arlen and team. I'm going to open up my administrator, which is where I have my MQTT collector currently configured. And right now, it looks like I have successfully enabled, connected to the Chariot, Ignition 8 Chariot server. Got a single connection, subscribe to everything. There are 630 tags on there. We're currently logging 440 of them that have rebirthed, and we're picking up about 20 to 100 different updates per second. So if I take a look at that, in my historian, here's all of the data I'm currently writing. It just started today, so there was no cheating. I didn't start grabbing it yesterday. And here's all of the different tags that are coming in right now. Now, Benson, I'm going to see if I picked up the LED yet. So we'll search for blue. And it looks like.
No, Jeff, you won't have done that. In the full disclosure, demos are really cool. So what we did is we hit the maximum number of connections on the distributor. So I'm trying to get that fixed right now. But we had so many people come in and connect, they maxed it out.
Well, let's take a look at Chris's tag, right? Chris, you were user 72C9 and you had a wind speed tag, right?
That is correct, yeah, and I can...
All right. Chris, what's your current value on your wind speed?
I've
got 75.
75 miles per hour, and it's just going to drop to 50.
All right. And I've got your 50, Chris.
There we go.
So one of the cool things that Canary also offers is a trending and dashboard tool, which of course, you know, I built out for a bit ahead of time to show some LED, but let's go ahead real quick and edit this guy. And I'm going to just throw your wind speed on, Chris. So how about we use a circular gauge? What's your range on your wind speed there, Chris?
0 to 60.
All right, I'm going to just go ahead and link some data. And instead of having to browse to the tag, I'm going just straight for wind speed, and there he is right there. All right, I've got you at 50. You want to make a change again? Oh, you just went to 40. And oh, now he's down to 30. And at the same time, I think I'll just go ahead and add a little bit of a spark chart. But what we're really known for, folks, is our trending. And I'm going to throw a trend chart on here as well and bring it in this way. So let's drop the spark chart. We'll bring in the trend chart, put it in live mode. And last thing I want to do, I want to play nice because we love being interoperable. So we're going to save this off. It's all built in HTML. We'll save it as our MQTT project and write it up. And I've got an ignition project going on here. See, Canary can also write data right back to Ignition as a tag history provider. We have a module to do that. And if I open up my Ignition project, I can drop everything we just did into my web browser. Oh, security issue. That's all right. I'll get around that. Well, that's okay. If I can't embed it right now, I will show you this. I could come in with Easy Chart and bring that same data in right out of Canary. And there's our history coming back into Ignition. All right, Arlen, you want me to pass it back to you?
All righty. All right. So Wes is working on extending the number of connections. Our distributor standard has 25 or 50 connections, and we basically exceeded that with all of the users that came in. Now, here's the list of all the users, so you can find your unique ID out here at the end. But we basically added all of these clients are coming in, and these are all people running transmission on their Ignition instances, being able to come in and publish information. So last thing I wanted to cover real quick before we get into a few of the questions that have been coming in is, since we're maxed out, I was just going to show everybody here the, actually it looks like I have a new module coming in. Let's go to our Amazon instance. And this is a new service that Amazon's put together. So the AWS IoT is their MQTT server, which that's not new, that we can connect to now. But what is new is this new service called IoT Sitewise. And with Sitewise, it literally gives us, it kind of fills in that gap that we've all seen as we try to move to cloud services, is that there's really nothing that caters to SCADA process variable information. In other words, you throw everything up into an S3 bucket, but really, if you think about that, you're kind of kicking the can down the road, because you still got to have somebody to write lambdas or functions to pull those tags out of your data lakes and then be able to put them into a time series database and do something interesting with them. Well, with the Sitewise service, now you can come in and you can see here, we're building models based on the Sparkplug namespace. So ultimately, what hopefully here in a few weeks, we'll be able to have another community live and show the ability to come in, just like we've been showing, with self-discovering devices, tags, engineering units, ranges, and then be able to take that all the way to the ability to build a model. I called it a PLC here, and I can see that in my PLC, I've got some measurement definitions and some units, so that now when we take process variable information to cloud services, Sitewise gives us somewhere to land that data that has, quote, SCADA-like structure, if you will. So we're very excited about this development, and I think that will finally give some really good use cases to using MQTT Sparkplug, the AWS IoT MQTT server, and some of their new services like the Sitewise service. So you can see it here, and you all can Google AWS Sitewise as well. So with that, Chris, why don't you go through a couple questions, and then I will, while you're doing that, actually install a distributor that will give us some more connections, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, whilst you're doing that, a couple of questions have come in for Canary. So Jeff, one question was, how does Canary differ from OSI Pi, if I can utter those words on this call?
That's a great question, and it's one we get often. So we've been around for the same amount of time, and the products are both built on proprietary non-SQL databases. Functionality, very similar. We actually embrace MQTT fully with Sparkplug, so we're ahead of them on that. But you're going to find completely different business models, because a second question that was asked was, what's Canary cost? Canary server starts at $4,000. If you go completely unlimited on tags, up to 2 million per server, you're in for under $65,000.
All right, great.
Check out canarylabs.com for the pricing.
Arlen, if you can do this one whilst you're installing that. One question that always comes up is about redundancy and standby configurations for MQTT.
There are some very good videos. I'll go through that really quick, Chris, but there are some very good videos around on Inductive's website and on our website. But long story short is that redundancy, if you think about one MQTT server, well, because of the spark plug specification, the way everything's designed, you can have n number of MQTT servers. Phillips 66 has 6 MQTT servers. Plains Midstream has 4. And with multiple servers and multiple availability groups, we're seeing 5 nines of availability, because if an MQTT server would fail or if a network would fail, everything knows that it's got multiple MQTT servers that can go connect to. So, and now we've got our signal fire sensor in. We've probably got the Opto Rio is in, Benson. So if you want to throw your camera up real quick, we'll just go show what we learned here. Opto MMP, modules, channels, blue ring LED.
And there we go. You can probably check it.
Oops. Do I have your camera up?
It is on my side.
I see
Okay.
it.
Just turned it off.
Yep.
Just turned it
And
on.
it's on. Yeah.
Now let's go to the fuel level, because again, the thing here, sorry about the kind of foobar on the broker, but the fact is that when we started this webinar an hour ago, we didn't know anything about your Rio, we didn't know anything about fuel level, we didn't know anything about your blue ring LED, and now we do, right? And now, as you pointed out, Benson, that single source of truth. And the signal fire came in, and now we know that we've got this device out there, and I've got a digital input, and I've actually got a switch here. So again, this is over LTE, battery powered, but you're going to hear the switch, and boom, those digital values just came in. So really what we wanted to show here is how quickly and easily it is to build out a complete MQTT-based infrastructure with the modules and with all the cool tools you get with Ignition. And let's see, Chris, real quick, let's go to the group, and there's all the people that have connected in so far. So
Very
you can
cool.
take a screenshot of that.
I will.
All right, any other questions?
One question is coming again, a Canary question about measuring. We tested throughput. Jeff, can you talk to that?
Yeah, so on a basic standard server over a regular network, you're going to get over 1 million updates per second. AWS, we've stood up a machine forcing data at over 12 million updates per second, 24/7 operation. So we've not yet found a enterprise solution that needed more throughput than the, let me say it this way, the historian is not the bottleneck. It's almost always the network. Hope that answers your question.
Yep. A couple of questions have come in. Again, the Canary seems to be the source of all the questions. Can the embedded graphics run on perspective?
Yeah, in fact, they can. So I saw that and couldn't find the question back to answer it. It works in both vision and perspective, and can provide the history to both projects as well. So you don't need to embed Canary into the Ignition project, but you could as an iframe.
Okay. All right. I think we'll take one last question, and then we can wrap things up here. Arlen, any special configuration for a VPN connection from the edge?
Not really. I mean, it's a remote originated, and again, that's one of the beauties of MQTT. When it was completely by accident that Andy and I made it remote originated, so we didn't have to know IP addresses at a central location. So once that VPN is set up, you're basically, remember, MQTT is built on top of TCP. So a lot of people ask, they say, well, Arlen, we read the MQTT spec and there's no security. Well, that's true because we use TCP security. So when TLS 1.2 goes to 1.3, goes to 2.0, we're going to take advantage of that all the way through the life cycle of network security. So should connect just fine over a VPN as well. Really cool. There was a ton of people that stayed on the call the whole time. Really great. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Again, thanks to Inductive Automation for giving us all this opportunity to do something during the COVID lockdown. And I hope everybody has a really good day today. Thank you very much.